All right, guys, so we are going to continue with our rectangular fraction model to explain our multiplication of our fractions. And then we're going to kind of start to deviate and kind of go away from that, okay? So if you kind of notice, our fractions keep kind of getting, I would say, like bigger. Our numerators are changing, our denominators are different, so there's a lot of different things that are kind of going on. So for these first 5, and actually we only have to do 4, but for the first 5 we are going to draw the model, and then for the other ones we're going to start just doing our multiplication problems, okay? So when we do this, we first want to always start off with that first fraction. So they've drawn 2/3 and they did their 2/3, and so this is where my 2/3 is, okay? And then they wanted to do 3/5 of that, so that's where they made that 3/5, and so they kind of shaded that in for 3/5. And if I were to count this up, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'd have 6/15, okay? Well, if I would come over here and multiply this, I did 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 5 is 15, and I can simplify it because I can divide both of these numbers by 3 to make it a smaller fraction. So that is how they got the answer of 2/3. 2/5. Now, if I would have had 6/15 over here, because that's what my model said, then I would have had to divide it by 3 to be able to get that simplified fraction of 2/5. Okay, so on letter B, I'm going to draw my model. Okay, and it says 3/4, so I'm going to make 1, 2, 3/4, and I'm looking only at this right here. And then I want to turn this into 4/5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, there's that fifths. And I only want to look at this 4/5. So I'm going to actually shade all of this in, okay? So here's the 3/4, and then here's that 4/5. And if I were to count this up, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 out of, so if I know this is 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. Now, 12/20ths is not simplified, but I'm going to come up here and simplify it. Now remember, this word of means to multiply. And when I multiply my fractions, I just multiply straight across. So 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 5 is 20. And when I look at these two numbers, what could I divide these two? Well, I know I could divide them by 2 each. That 12 divided by 2 is going to give me 6. And then 20 divided by 2 is going to give me 10. And I just realized I could actually divide it by a different number. I could divide it by 4. So then that means I need to divide this again by 2. And I can make it even smaller of 3/5. Because what I could have done is I could have done this divided by 4. I did it by 2. So I actually had to simplify 2 times. And I would still get 3/5 if I just divided it by 4. Okay? Try to do better this next one. So I'm going to go ahead and make my area model of 2/5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm only looking at 2/5. So I'm only looking at this right now. Okay, and what I want to look at is it says that I want to turn this into 2/3. So I only want to look at this. So I'm just going to kind of shade this part in. And if I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of how many do I have altogether? Well, I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Now, when I'm looking at this, I can't really simplify it because I would have to divide this either by 2 or 4, and I cannot divide 15 by 2 or 4. So I can't simplify, but I am going to come up and double check to make sure my answer is correct. Remember, we just multiply straight across. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 3 is 15. My answer is 4/15, and it matches up. Okay. So now I'm going to do letter D. Okay, so it says 4/5, and that's why I drew my fifth. So here's that 4/5 that I'm going to focus on, and it says I want to multiply it by 2/3. So I'm going to take just 2/3, and so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just color this in 2/3. Okay. So I'm going to count this up. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. out of, how many altogether? So I've got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Again, if I look at this 8/15, well, I can't really simplify. If I wanted to divide it, I would have to divide 8 by 8, 4, or 2, and I cannot divide 15 by that. So I'm going to come up here and check my work. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 3 is 15. Alrighty. So now I'm going to do this one last one with my model. And it says 3/4. And I'm just going to kind of draw that little arrow to show me there's my 3/4. And it told me I want to do it by 2/3. So here's my thirds, and I'm only going to look at these 2/3. So I'm going to shade that in, and I'm going to count it up. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, when I look at this, guys, 6/12, I can simplify that. So I'm going to wait to simplify it up here because remember, when I multiply, I can just multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 3 is 12. I know that I can divide both these numbers by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So my answer is 1/2. Okay. So on this one, on number 2, we are just going to go ahead and we're going to multiply across. But if you kind of notice, as an example, we are actually simplifying before we solve it. So if this is something you're like, gosh, Mrs. Spillman, this just doesn't really make any sense, go ahead and just multiply straight across, and then just know you probably will have to simplify. But I will tell you one thing, your numbers are going to be a lot bigger, and you're not going to want to necessarily multiply these all out. So just kind of be careful with that. So they had 6 7s times 5 8s. And so what they did was they said 6 times 5 and then 7 times 8. And they had those both together on the same numerator and denominator. And so what they kind of did was they kind of looked at the numbers that are kind of diagonal from each other. And could I take 6 divided by something and 8 divided by something? Well, yes, I could. I could take 6 divided by 2 to give me 3, and I can do 8 divided by 2 to give me 4. So I'm simplifying it down and making this easier to multiply out, because then if I were to look here, I can't simplify this down any further. Okay, so here let's do an example. So I'm going to write this out that it's 3 times 5 and 4 times 6. Okay, if I look at this, 5 and 4 I can't simplify, but I can simplify 3 and 6. What can I do to 3 and 6? Well, I can divide 3 by 3, and I can divide 6 by 3. So if I do 3 divided by 3, so if I do 3 divided by 3, that's going to give me 1. And if I do 6 divided by 3, that's going to give me 2. So now look at this, guys. 1 times 5 is 5, and 4 times 2 is 8. The answer is 5/8. Now, if you would have just multiplied this straight across, you would have gotten 15/24, but then you would have had to simplify that further, okay? So here I'm going to do the same thing, 4 times 5, and then 5 times 8. Make sure that you don't switch those numbers around, because you definitely don't want to do that. You want to keep them exactly where you see them. Now this one you can actually do it 2 different times, because I can do 5 divided by 5, and that's going to give me 1. And then if I have 4 and 8, I can actually divide each of them by 4, and that gives me 1. Divide this by 4, that gives me 2. And my answer is 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So my answer is 1/2. Now what you could have done is you would have had 4 times 5 is 20, and 5 times 8 is 40. You would have had 20 and 40, and then you would have had to simplify that down. So this just kind of makes it so that you don't have to simplify at the very end.